Who are you and what do you do?
Matt Casbon, and I am the UL ticket manager. I manage all of the ticketing inventory and databases for the university's athletic department.
How do y'all go about raising money for any organizations that y'all?
Basically, our main source of revenue comes from two different branches. One is the Raging Cajun Athletic Foundation, which is strictly donation driven. And then obviously we do all the ticket sales, which generates revenue for the athletic department. Football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, and softball do season tickets
Okay.
as well as individual tickets. And then their Olympic sports, women's soccer, women's volleyball, they also charge admission.
For the Education Athletic Foundation, do you have to be an alumni for that, or is that just
Uh, you
anybody can
you do
participate?
not have to be an alumni member to join. Basically, donations start. Minimum donation to receive benefits is $100. Goes all the way up to the highest level donor is $20,000 and above, and that is strictly, like I said, donation driven with benefits associated with the sports that the athletic department has.
What all incorporates into y'all budget that y'all have
When
for
you
you?
talk about budget, you have to talk about salaries,
Okay.
expenses. You have to talk about revenue that you're going to generate. Not only through ticket sales and donations, but also, the university um, also has money that is directed towards athletics. And so when you're putting together your budget, you want to look at the past 5 years and see where your growth was, where there's room for potential growth, and use those numbers to then determine what your budget's going to be for the current year. Because obviously you want to have some successes. You may know in some areas where maybe you're putting money into a project to renovate, and that's going to be on the expense side. So you look at the past 5 years, deferred maintenance, things like that, that can affect your revenue and your expenses.
And that's the same from like year to year. Basically do the same process, or
Well,
y'all change it
you,
up.
you have to look at the same process, yes. Depending on what new projects you're taking on, if the NCAA would allow you to hire more coaches, let's say, or more assistant coaches, operations people for a sport, you have to look at that salary as an expense. So you're looking at your line items, and the magnitude of those may change, but ultimately you're going to cover the same criteria each year when you're using that to determine your budget.
How often do y'all revise your budget?
You have to do it annually because obviously you're starting a new fiscal year, but you want to take a look at it probably quarterly just to
Hmm.
see where you are because in athletics you're looking at football season, men's and women's basketball, baseball and softball, and any possible postseason opportunities. So for athletics, you probably need to look at it quarterly to see, the minimum where you're landing as far as your projections for the budget.
Overall is in charge of everything.
Though the way it works in athletics, you obviously have a business manager.
Mhm.
They kind of control the budget. They are in charge of balancing everything. The athletic director signs off on the budget and ultimately gets the blessing from the vice presidents and the presidents of the university as far as determining what the final budget's going to be.
Like once you have the budget done and everything, who's in charge of checking it?
You have to get approval from the athletic director for any, purchase requisitions, which
Hmm.
is also going to go through the business manager's office to process the paperwork aspect of it. And, you're getting, purchase orders and trying to get those processed in order to take care of projects. And ultimately, those two people will sign off on those projects that you're trying to incur, maybe on the expense side.
Do y'all do any sort of fundraisers or anything, or is it just
The main fundraiser is the Raging Cajun Athletic Foundation.
okay?
That is the fundraising arm of athletics,
Okay.
basically through its annual fund, and then all the sports have their own driven funds, which are also housed under RCA.
Do you know some of the specific sports fundraisers like football does or basketball
Every
does, or
sport,
they
every sport has their own
their own?
ability to fundraise. They don't have a designated name for it,
Hmm.
but football might have the quarterback club, basketball has a rebounders club, women's basketball has an assist club, baseball has the diamond club, softball has strikeout club. They also have the opportunity to sell signage at these facilities, which will generate revenue and things like that.
say if y'all make it to the playoffs or whatever? Do y'all get money for T-shirts and stuff, or do y'all?
Athletics would get money based on there's like a revenue sharing system with football, with basketball. I'm not exactly sure with baseball and softball, but the way it works is there's an amount of money, and the conference office receives that amount of money, then distributes it throughout the schools in the conference, and that's just based on a revenue sharing system. And then if you host postseason events, there are ticket sales associated with hosting those events, and that revenue generated, is used to obviously offset the expenses of hosting a tournament.
What technology do y'all use for the budget? Is there any specific programs or any specific technologies
Well,
that?
you can kind of manipulate your budget a bunch of different ways. For ticketing, we use the Arctics database that houses all of our ticket sales and our data management. The business office uses QuickBooks. The university uses Millennium and a banner system, which are two kind of development systems that house the information. They also use Razor's Edge. These are different accounting softwares that can help you in determining your budget and also balancing. And then you can use Excel when you're kind of starting out with the budget process to look where you were last year. If you want to put in a percentage increase, maybe percentage stay the same. You can input it real quick just to manipulate the numbers and see where you want to be and how you need to get there.
Which one do you like the most?
Doing the ticketing, I work with Arctics every day. Without it, it's kind of the heartbeat, I guess, for ticketing. That is where all your information is that you need as far as inventory, ticket sales, audits, that type of stuff. So Arctics is the most important as far as running the ticket operations.
What do you like or dislike about it?
I like the aspect that it houses the history. So if someone has a question about, their family's seats or their own seats dating back, we can go back in and find that information for them. Like everything, you just wish it was a little bit more streamlined, cut out some of the steps it takes to get to that final answer. But I think that's kind of associated with every project you're going to work on. Eventually down the road, you can figure things out to make it work faster without having to go through a completely different software.
What are the policies that are associated with the decisions in the budget? Like, what are y'all specific policies that y'all have that come with making the final decision on the budget?
Well, ultimately, with your budget, you got to be financially responsible and fiscally disciplined, because in these current economic times, you're not spending as much money as you were in the past. You're also not generating as much revenue as you were in the past. So that discipline is very important. Making sure that you're using the resources you have now and not incurring new expenses where they can be avoided, and then generating revenue possibly in different ways than you were before. Because of these current economic times, you have to find new sources of revenue. And then as far as the policies, ultimately you have to follow the procedures of turning in your purchase orders, waiting for them to be approved before you obviously go out and make that purchase.
What is that procedure? Like, what are the basic steps?
Basically, you find the product you need. You fill out the purchase order for the price. That goes to the business office. Business office puts that in the budget. That goes to the athletic director. They both sign off on it. Once you receive that purchase order back, then you can go ahead and place your order, because once you receive the bill for it, it's in the budget and it'll be paid.
So ultimately, at the top of that process is the athletic director.
And the business manager.
The business manager. All right. For purchases like that, does that come from y'all budget, or does that come from your department's budget, or the whole organization?
It would depend. It would depend on what type of purchase you're trying to make. Every marketing has a small budget. Sports information has a small budget. All these individual sports have a small budget. Ticketing has a budget. So you have to stick within that, and that going into the beginning of the year, how much money you have. And you just have to be smart with, because you got to think about supplies. You got to think about longevity, and really, being conscious of how far can I stretch the budget that I have.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Matt.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.